check on your mic.
Check. Good.
Let me see. Yeah. Good morning. It's good to see you out this morning. Let's start off by singing I Stand Amazed. I stand amazed in the presence of Jesus the Nazarene, and wonder how he could love me, a sinner condemned and clean, singing how marvelous, how wonderful, and my song shall ever be. How marvelous, how wonderful is my Savior's love for me. He took my sins and my sorrows, he made them his very own. He bore the burden to Calvary and suffered and died alone, singing how marvelous, how wonderful, and my song shall ever be. How marvelous, how wonderful is my Savior's love for me. When with the ransomed in glory, his face I at last shall see, will be my joy through the ages, to sing of his love for me, singing how marvelous, how wonderful, and my song shall ever be. How marvelous, how wonderful is my Savior's love for me. How marvelous, how wonderful, and my song shall ever be. How marvelous, how wonderful is my Savior's love for me.
Good morning and welcome here. There's one person awake. Thanks, Newton. So if you're into snowboarding and skiing, today is your lucky day. It looks fantastic out there. If you were waiting for spring, this is not your day. But we do have a few things in the announcements to look forward to. One is Good Friday service. That will be happening at 11 a.m. on Friday here at the church. And I believe we're doing communion. So please come prepared for that. There is also a prayer meeting being held at the church on Wednesday at 7 p.m. We'll hear a little bit more about that later. And there's also the draft for the Constitution for the church, the rule changes that we're putting together. If you could get any changes or suggestions you may have to Marcus today, that would be great. This time we'll call up Helen for a children's feature.
It's not on. Now it's on.
Okay, so we're going to start off with a story, and then we'll have a little bit of an experiment. And this story takes place around 1765 or so, and the story was written by Mara L. Pratt in 1889, and it's actually a true story. And it's called A Brave Little Girl. So during the American Revolution, the people of Boston were suffering greatly from lack of food. The British, under General Gage, held the town, and the large number of British soldiers greatly depleted the amount of food in the city. In the villages around Boston, the brave patriots saw the affliction of their friends in Boston and made plans to send them food. In a little town called Windham, there was a patriotic parson named White, and he urged his people to give all they could. His little daughter, catching the spirit of loyalty, wondered how she could help the suffering Bostonians. Soon after, the villagers prepared to send Frederick Manning to Boston with sheep and cattle and a load of wheat. The little girl thought of her pet lamb. Could she? Ought she to be part of it, to part with it? Running to her father, she eagerly asked his advice. But the parson smiled kindly and said, "No, dear, it's not necessary that your little heart be tried by this bitter strife." And he bade her run away and be happy. Still, the thought would not leave her. There in Boston were little girls, no older than herself, crying for food and clothing. She must give all she could to help them. At last the day came on which the cattle and supplies were to be driven to town. Choking down her sobs, the little martyr untied her pet from an old apple tree and, crossing the fields, waited for Manning, the driver, at the crossroads. "Please, sir," she said, her lip quivering and the tears rolling down her cheeks, I want to do something for the poor, starving people in Boston. I want to do my part, but I have nothing but this one little lamb. Please, sir, take it to Boston with you, but couldn't you carry it in your arms part of the way? 'Cause it is so little, sir." Then, bursting into tears and throwing her apron over her eyes, as if to shut the sight of her dear little pet, she ran away toward her home. She was too young to understand the reason for the suffering in Boston, but she did understand that there were people who were hungry. What a selfless thing she did in sharing her one true possession with others who needed it. So this story just reminded me of what Jesus did for us. God gave his son, the spotless lamb, the most precious gift. No one could ever give anything greater than what God gave by sending his son Jesus in our place. And we're just going to do a little demonstration to kind of show what happens when we meet with Jesus. So the experiment is called elephant toothpaste. I don't know if anybody here has any pet elephants at home and whose teeth need regular brushing. Okay, you can do this first. So Ashton's going to explain the experiment a little bit, and then we'll get to it.
So this experiment is a decomposition reaction. Or a change in formula. We're using hydrogen peroxide, which has a formula of H2O2. We're using yeast as our catalyst or helper to break the formula down to H2O plus O2, which is water, and oxygen gas. We're using dish soap to trap the oxygen, which will create lots of foam.
Okay, so we're going to pour some hydrogen peroxide into our containers, into our beakers. Okay, put this in. Okay, so there's our hydrogen peroxide. And we're just using like a 3%, which is pretty harmless. It's not harmless like this, but it will be after the reaction. And we're going to add some dish soap. Do you guys see the hydrogen peroxide and the dish soap doing anything? Do the kids see it moving? It's not doing a thing, is it? That's because in order to create a reaction, we need a helper, or what we would call a catalyst. And we're using yeast to do that. And you guys know, your moms who bake bread or donuts, cinnamon buns, anything like that, you need yeast to make your dough rise, right, kids? She does not use hydrogen peroxide. She uses water, right? So we could just use water, but the reaction would be much slower, and we don't have time for that this morning. So we're just going to activate our yeast. We need it activated because it's a live microorganism. You're going to throw some, we're going to put some food coloring in it just for fun. Lots of food coloring, just because we like color. Okay, we're going to stir the yeast to make sure it's good dissolved. We'll just move some of our things here. Has anyone here ever made elephant toothpaste? No one's ever done this experiment? So what will happen is we'll get an incredible amount of foam, or that's what's supposed to happen. It happened at home. And actually the dish soap traps the oxygen. So what we're trying to do is just break down this hydrogen peroxide, which is H2O2, and then break it down to just a water and oxygen gas. We need the dish detergent